Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Here are the top stories of the news. APC, PDP calls for the arrest of those behind the alleged plot to create interim government. Trial of Chrisland School and its staff over the deaths of 12-year-old Whitney Adeniran begins today. On the foreign scene, Russian authorities detained American reporter Evan Gashkovich on espionage charges. Good afternoon and welcome to Spring News at 12 on Western Spring Television. My name is Damilola Raphael. The presidential campaign councils of the All Progressives Congress and the People's Democratic Party have challenged the Department of State Services to get tough with plotters of the interim national government. The councils, in separate interviews yesterday in Abuja, said the push for the interim government was unconstitutional, adding that the plotters should be arrested. Meanwhile, the chairman of Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAG, Yabagi Sani, also asked the DSS to name and apprehend those it said are behind plans to install an interim government in the country. This comes after the DSS, in a statement by its spokesperson Peter Afunaya, confirmed a plot by some key players to install an interim government and stop Bola Tinubu from being inaugurated as president. He says the service considers the plot being pursued by entrenched interest as not only an aberration but a mischievous way to set aside the constitution and undermine civil rule. The DSS said the illegality is totally unacceptable in a democracy and to peace-loving Nigerians, adding that this is even more so as the machination is taking place after the peaceful conduct of the elections in most parts of the country. As the crisis rocking the People's Democratic Party, PDP, seems to have reached boiling point, attention has been drawn to the trend of aborted tenures of its national chairman. This comes as the party continues to reel from its performance at the just concluded presidential election. Emmanuel Ujiategele has more on the story.
In keeping with its now infamous tradition of truncated tenures of its national chairman due to internal crisis and litigation, the People's Democratic Party (PDP) has again seen the abrupt end of another chairman. This time, Benue indigene Senator Iyorchia Ayu is a casualty, following in the steps of Uche Secondus, Ahmed Makafi, Alimodu Sharif, Bamanga Tuko, and others. Senator Ayu's travels began in the aftermath of the presidential primaries of his party, which produced Atiku Abubakar. That exercise put Senator Ayu at variance with Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike, who lost at the primaries and subsequently formed the G5 group, demanding the resignation of the PDP chair and accusing him of corruption.
I will say it. If anybody feels hot, let him go to court and challenge me. Nobody will lead me to a campaign. A man who is corrupt. I have challenged you. You are corrupt and you are corrupt and you cannot lead me to any campaign. I will not. Rivers State will not. Whether they like it or not, you cannot lead us to a campaign. You is corrupt. I went to Benue State. You have not said 1 year in the office, and you are fighting corruption. How do you fight corruption? I asked you, you took 1 billion naira. I told you you took 100 million naira. I told you you took the money that we realized for the primaries. You sue me. You do what? Sue Wike. And you are building a university in Benue State. For you have not gotten to 1 year. Assuming you enter office, what will you do? Shame, shame, shame.
Despite several calls by the group of 5 aggrieved governors, Senator Ayu insisted only the National Executive Council of his party can remove or ask him to step down. But in March 2023, the PDP national chairman was restrained by a high court in Benue from parading himself as chairman of the party, barely 48 hours after he was suspended by the party at his ward in Igorov Boko local government.
Vote of no confidence and suspension of Dr. Euchi Ayu as member People's Democratic Party, PDP, Igoru Council Ward, Boko local government, Benue State. With the underlisted ward executive members of Igoru Ward, Boko local government. In view of the foregoing, we hereby pass a vote of no confidence on Dr. Euchi Ayu and suspend him as a member of our party with immediate effect. The suspension takes effect from the 24th of March.
This escalation of Senator Ayu's predicament eventually led to his stepping aside and the appointment of National Vice Chairman North Umar Demagum as acting national chairman. In his immediate reaction, Governor Wike held that the court had settled Ayu's claim that he can only be removed by the neck.
Those lawyers telling you that the ward has no power to suspend you is only neck. Then you don't understand. When you came, it was the ward that suspended secondary, is it not? And you went and took office, is it not? It is not that you know that's only neck. Let me tell you, since they have not told you, the court has struck off that section of our constitution to say that neck only. So you don't know what. And the PDP did not even appeal the judgment. So forget.
Special Assistant on Communication to the ousted Senator Ayu, Simon Imobo Tuam, said his principal would challenge the court order while abiding by the party's decision. There, the party's constitution issues will be examined and it will be determined if his suspension and removal is valid. For now, it appears that the national chairmanship curse of the PDP will linger for a while, and some party members say they look forward to the day the chairman will serve out his tenure. Emmanuel Ujadigili, Western Spring Television News.
In the meantime, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, yesterday began issuing certificates of return to governors and deputy governors-elect across the country. The commission, head in a statement, said it would issue the certificates of return to every candidate who has been returned elected from March 29th to 31st as mandated by the law. The gubernatorial election was held on March 18th in 28 states of the Federation. In Rivers State, the presentation took place at INEC State Office in Port Harcourt, while the governor-elect Sim Fubara received his certificate of return from INEC National Commissioner May Agbamoche Mbu.
Is a manifestation of that belief. Is 33 over 33, 2 over 2. I believe you understand what I mean. I will not end by not assuring the Rivers people that the development they are recording by our principal, we will continue with it. We will ensure that though the bar has been raised for us, we will also raise the bar for whoever is going to take over from us. That we have just started. We solicit for your.
Meanwhile, Rivers State's Governor Nyesom Wike says he won't run from the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, when he leaves office on May 29, 2023. The governor made this known during the commissioning of Rumigbo Internal Road Network in the Obio-Akpo local government area yesterday. People's Democratic Party, PDP's strongman, said he had nothing to fear if the anti-graft agency comes to probe his administration. Governor Wike, whose 8-year, 2-term will end on May 29, 2023, directed the state's governor-elect Simin Lalayi Fubara to show EFCC his many accomplished projects in the state if the Anti-Corruption Commission comes for investigation. Moving on, the federal government yesterday began an online registration of medical laboratories in the country to enhance service delivery. The Registrar of the Medical Laboratory Science Council of Nigeria, Dr. Tosin Erabo, made this known in Abuja at a meeting with stakeholders. Dr. Erabo said the registration would scale up efficiency, effectiveness, transparency, speed of service delivery, as well as data collation and management. He said that the purpose of the meeting was to enable stakeholders witness firsthand and possibly critique the ongoing digitalizing registration process. He further called on stakeholders to avail themselves of the opportunities offered by the new framework to enhance service delivery. The Federal Executive Council, FEC, has approved free internet services at 20 selected airports, 6 markets, and 43 universities across the country at the cumulative cost of 24.2 billion naira. The Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Isa Pantami, disclosed this after the FEC meeting chaired by President Muhammadu Buhari yesterday. He affirmed that states like Lagos and Ondo in the southwest, Imo, Anambra, Enugu in the southeast, Rivers and Akwa Ibom for the south-south, Abuja and Kwara for the north-central, while Kano, Sokoto and Kebbi in the northwest, Adamawa, Maiduguri and Gombe in northeast will enjoy the free broadband for passengers coming into the airports. He disclosed that FEC had earlier approved a similar memo for the provision of unlimited internet in 18 universities in the first phase of the project. Cumulatively, the 24.20 billion naira project is to be implemented by the Nigerian Communications Commission for 5 months. Elsewhere, the House of Representatives has summoned the Chief of Army Staff, Farouk Yahaya, and the Chief of Defense Staff, Lucky Irabo, over an alleged attack on a Benue lawmaker, Pam Sokpo. The resolution followed a motion moved by Mark Bila yesterday. In his motion, Mr. Bila said the soldiers attacked the lawmaker alongside some other civilians during the governorship election on March 18th. He explained that the soldiers stormed Old Barn Hotel, Boko, in Benue State and assaulted Mr. Sokpo and the others. He also alleged that same soldiers killed 2 persons in an extrajudicial manner. The House resolved that the military heads must provide the identity of the officers. You're watching Spring News at 12 on Western Spring Television. We will be right back after this break.
The 1914 Amalgamation Treaty is synonymous to the birth of Nigeria. Frederick Lugard, a British Army captain and an outlaw who struck gold in Africa, became the instrument used by destiny to make it happen. The amalgamation of Nigeria was designed for economic reasons by the colonial administration to offset Northern Protectorate budget deficit by Southern Protectorate surplus returns. The amalgamation had ab initio created imbalance in the economic political structure of Nigeria and was responsible for the persistent hiccups and the efforts to forge a united country till today. Nigeria's amalgamation was labeled as the mistake of 1914 by native northern conservatives who neither wanted it nor contributed anything significant to its sustenance. Western Spring Television identifies with Amalgamation Treaty of 1914 as a watershed event in history. Fumilayo Ransom Kuti was an educationist and advocate of women's rights. She was recognized for her vitriolic comments against colonial policy of taxation as it affected the Nigerian women. Bere, as fondly addressed by her women followers, Fumilayo championed the initiation of universal adult suffrage, which gave an unprecedented leeway for women to contest elective offices and power to exercise voting rights. married to a foremost educationist and teacher, Israel Oladotun Ransom Kuti. The first president of Nigeria Union of Teachers, Fumilayo Ransom Kuti, was the mother of children who inherited her spirit of activism. Olufela Anbe Ololari, the former, a renowned musical legend. She was the first female student of Abeokuta Grammar School and the first female to own and drive a car in Nigeria. The award recipient of Member of Order of Nigeria MON and Lenin Peace Prize was born on 25th October 1900 and was killed on 13th April 1978 by rampaging road soldiers in Lagos. Western Spring Television identifies Fumilayo Ransom Kuti as a watershed character in history.
Welcome back. Moving on, the Lagos State government will today begin the trial of Christian School, or Kwebi, and some of its employees over the death of one of the school's pupils, 12-year-old Whitney Adeniran. The school's workers will be arraigned before Justice Onyidamola Ogala of the Lagos State High Court in Ikeja. The defendants are to be tried on a 2-count charge bordering on involuntary manslaughter, reckless and negligent acts contrary to sections 224 and 251 of the criminal law of Lagos State. Ms. Adeniran slumped on February 9, 2023 during an inter-house sports activity by the school at the Agege Sports Stadium. Talking business, the Minister of Labour and Employment, Chris Ngige, has said the federal government has approved a pay raise for civil servants in the country. Mr. Ngige, who made this known in a news chat, said the pay raise is a peculiar allowance for civil servants in view of the current economic reality. He explains that the money will help the government workers navigate through inflation, rising cost of living, hike in transportation fare, housing, and electricity tariffs. The minister also called on the incoming administration to start discussions on the review of the minimum wage in the country, adding that new government should come up with a new minimum wage higher than the current 30,000 naira by May 2024.
What I said, actually, I think that was in January or so, or December, January, that the federal government is looking at giving people in the public service a pay raise to take care of the increased cost of living. And that is correct. In the Presidential Committee on Salaries, we have done something for the civil servants. That's the hardcore civil servant, or those who are on what we call consolidated public servant scales, COMPS is called. It's for public, it's civil servants, and some corporations, MDAs that are on that COMPS. COMPS is the salary scale for civil servant. So we have handled it. We made our recommendation. We put a percentage for President to approve. We have approved it at our own committee level.
Toyota Motor Corp has announced that its global sales hit a record for the month of February as it bounced back from severe pandemic-induced parts shortages. Japan's biggest automaker made the announcement in the statement, adding that worldwide production also increased for a second straight month. It, however, noted that shortages of parts continue to be a problem. Last month, its global sales jumped 10.3% to 773,271 vehicles, driven by a blistering 53.2% climb in domestic sales. The company further disclosed that domestic production continued to show a strong recovery, climbing 11.2% in February after a 30.1% surge in January. On the foreign scene, Russian authorities have detained an American reporter for the Wall Street Journal Evan Gashkovich on espionage charges. Service FSB made this news this morning, revealing that Mr. Gashkovich was arrested in the Ural mountain city of Yekaterinburg while allegedly trying to obtain classified information. The security service alleged that Mr. Gashkovich was collecting classified information about the activities of one of the enterprises of Russian military-industrial complex that constitutes a state secret. The FSB, which replaces the KGB, did not say when the arrest took place, but Mr. Gashkovich could face up to 20 years in prison if convicted of espionage. He is the first reporter for the American news outlets to be arrested on espionage charges in Russia since the Cold War, and his arrest comes amid bitter global tensions over the fighting in Ukraine. In the United States, several feared dead as 2 U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopters crashed during a training mission over the U.S. state of Kentucky. Army spokeswoman Nondes Thurman, in a statement today, said the status of the crew members was not immediately known. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear said deaths were expected, and Kentucky Police and the State Emergency Management Service were responding. It was, however, unclear how many people were aboard the aircraft. Meanwhile, in Africa, prominent Senegal opposition leader Ousmane Sonko is scheduled to face charges of libel in a Dakar court later today. If found guilty, the political leader could be barred from running in the 2024 presidential elections. Originally set for March 16, the hearing was postponed to March 30 after state security services forcibly removed Mr. Sonko from his vehicle and escorted him to court on the day of the hearing. Shortly after, clashes erupted between police forces and Mr. Sonko's supporters. Mr. Sonko had said he inhaled a harmful substance during the altercations, which impaired his eyesight and breathing, claiming the altercation amounted to an assassination attempt. However, speaking at a press conference on Tuesday, Senegal's Attorney General Ibrahima Bakhoum said a suspect had been arrested in relation to the case. The talking striker Chris Wood is out for the season amid several other injury concerns battling the relegation-threatened side. Forest boss Steve Cooper made this known in an interview this morning, revealing that the striker picked up the injury while on international duty with New Zealand. He disclosed that Sergi Orea, Andre Ayew, and Gustavo Scarpa were also injured while away with their countries, while Taiwo Awoniyi and Cheiko Koyate are both back in training. Cooper added that Awoniyi's return will be important for Forest, with Wood now sidelined. However, Cooper does have concerns about Wales winger Brennan Johnson ahead of Saturday's game at home to relegation rivals Wolves. Away from football, 7-time world champion race car driver Lewis Hamilton has emphatically put to bed any concerns that he wanted to leave Mercedes, saying he planned to be with the team till his last days. The Britain's disappointment after the season-opening Grand Prix in Bahrain, where he finished a distant fifth in his underperforming W14 car, led to claims that he was set to seek a move elsewhere. He insisted that was not the case after a more competitive race in Saudi Arabia a fortnight ago. However, the 30-year-old, ahead of the Australian Grand Prix, said he wanted to finish his career with the once all-conquering Silver Arrows. Before we end the news, here is a recap of our top stories. The presidential campaign councils of the All Progressives Congress and the People's Democratic Party have challenged the Department of State Services to get tough with plotters of the interim national government. The Lagos State government will today begin the trial of Chrisland School, Okpebi, and some of its employees over the death of one of the school's pupils, 12-year-old Whitney Adeniro. On the foreign scene, we brought you news that Russian authorities have detained an American reporter for the Wall Street Journal, Evan Gashkovich, on espionage charges. You can follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. But ends Spring News at 12. I am Damilola Raphael. Thanks for watching. Good afternoon.